Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk with Daly, CMO of Space and Time, a blockchain for CK proven data, and we're going to talk about Web3 marketing as a whole, and we really go deep. We really discuss like the major challenges and what makes Web3 marketing so different to Web2 marketing and why it's really worth it as a whole as well.
Wave Act, the Web3 software company that understands what you want.
Hi Catherine, the first question I have for you. What's one of the biggest misconceptions about Web3 marketing in general?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on, Kevin. I'm excited to talk to you today. I love sharing insights about Web3 marketing and talking about space and time. So looking forward to kicking off. I think something that people maybe have misconceptions about, or at least overcorrect when it comes to crypto marketing, is this idea that all of Web 2 marketing and traditional marketing goes out the window. And part of that is true, right? Your audience is very different. The community is very different. The goals of your marketing are very different. But to completely ignore traditional vehicles, I think is a mistake. And I think one thing that crypto marketers could really stand to strengthen by is using things like data and thinking through things like user funnel and prioritizing things like user experience for the product that you're selling, and a tighter connection with your BD teams and DevRel teams. All of that is really just tools in your arsenal to push your message more effectively, onboard users more effectively. And even though, you might not be doing things like email marketing and you might be prioritizing memes on Twitter or different channels than you would in traditional marketing, some of the same skills apply. And so, especially when I'm hiring for a team, I like people who, maybe are crypto native, but also have some experience in more traditional marketing vehicles, because I think there's a lot of experience and ideas we can pull from that maybe are being underutilized in the space today.
Love that. What would you say if I would state now, like, is there a difference at all? Because what do traditional marketers? They try to adhere to their target group, right? And Web3 marketing just means, okay, that's your target group.
Well, yeah, I mean, traditional marketing is selling a product, right? At least, if you
Sure.
look at tech or SaaS-based marketing, like your goal is to generate revenue for that product, to get people to pay to use it, right? And so it's much more naturally tightly intertwined with sales, especially when you think about the funnel of marketing trying to attract users from a top funnel and bring them down through a sales pipeline. In crypto, though, it's a little different, right? Because you're building a community, right? Not necessarily just of users, but also of token holders, protocol contributors, content creators, and people on Discord, right? It's more diverse in terms of the goal that you're actually trying to achieve. And so a lot of times crypto marketers think that we have to reinvent the wheel. And in a lot of ways we do, right? In a lot of ways it's uncharted territory. We're all kind of learning as we go. Things certainly change a lot faster in the crypto community than they do in traditional software. So you have to be a lot more agile, a lot more boots on the ground and plugged into the community itself. But things like analyzing data, building funnels, segmenting target audiences, it's all still relevant. And I think, prioritizing people that are really crypto native and really good at making memes and really boots on the ground in the community is awesome for fulfilling the first part of that. But you also need people with more hard skills that can fulfill the second part of that. The thing, though, is the second is a lot easier to teach. In my experience, it's a lot easier to teach somebody how to do traditional marketing than it is to teach somebody to be crypto native. And so, like if you're hiring for a marketing role or hiring for a team, I would always advise to prioritize somebody who is more familiar with the crypto community and that audience, because the second part is more teachable, or at least easier to teach quickly.
Interesting, interesting. Um, from a custom acquisition perspective, because you mentioned, okay, your like traditional marketing is more tied to sales,
Mhm.
right? In the end, although most Web3 companies are in some sense startups, right? You still have to care about things like customer acquisition costs and so on. How does that tie into your accountability as a marketing leader? Like how does management deal with this? Of course, it depends on the size of the company and the expectations, right? But what's your experience so far?
Well, it really also depends on what the product is itself and who your audience is. Like in the case of Space and Time, we're a very developer focused product. We're selling to DeFi developers, right? We want people to come use our blockchain to get data about on-chain activity and use that to ZK proven, then inform their smart contracts. So for us, like plugging into channels that reach those DeFi developers is really critical. Hackathons, conferences, partnerships with large DeFi protocols, for example, all of those things are very strategic for us and kind of building out that funnel. But revenue is a priority for us as well. And, you know, like, I think that's one thing that crypto companies haven't necessarily gotten right yet. Like a lot of times, a token has a lot of hype, maybe they have an amazing community, but there's really no revenue to back it up. And you can float on that and rest on those laurels for a long time until, you know, you're in the deepest part of the bear and we have to return to fundamentals and things like revenue start to really matter for the health of the project going forward. So it's a balance, really, is what I'm trying to get at. You can't neglect the community building side of things and hiring people that are crypto native and know how to run that side, but you can't neglect traditional sales and traditional marketing either, because that does, you know, help with that revenue generation side of things.
Cool. And from a like, it sounds like, or that's my experience so far as well as a non-marketer. It's uh, it's a lot more important to care about targeting. Is that right? Because you don't want airdrop farmers, like you always have them, right? But like, what's your experience like? How much focus do you and your team put on that, or like how do you work around it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and like I said earlier, you want your community to be diverse. Of course, a significant chunk of that should be users. A significant chunk of that will be token holders inevitably. But you also have people who are creating content or just evangelizing about the project or engaging with it because they believe in the mission of it, even if they're not the target audience for users. And so you really have to be very multifaceted in that sense. And that's why it's important to have people on your team that specialize specifically in community building and understand these nuances and understand who is in that community so that you can better serve them and adjust where needed. So that's how it's been for us. We have an awesome internal community team who has a really great finger on the pulse of who's in the community, who's doing what, like what's attracting them, what's not attracting them, and how do we better optimize for all of these different segments.
From a marketer perspective, how is it to work or to have developers as your target group?
It requires a lot, surprisingly, a lot of like technical understanding and
Okay.
expertise. I don't think I would be nearly as successful at my job if I hadn't taken the time to really get in the weeds with the product team in the first several months that I came into the role to understand what it is that we've built and the nuances of it and the ins and outs and the use cases and the target audience. Like I don't know how we would be forming marketing strategies to reach developers if we ourselves didn't have a very thorough understanding of what the appeal is for them. And so you can't really skip that as a marketer. If you're going to work at an infrastructure focused protocol or you know, crypto project, you have to understand the product that you're marketing. And I think a product marketer, somebody who specializes in that, is a really valuable person to have on your team. But I think it's something that everyone, you know, needs to be involved with. The BD people, the community people, to some level should have an understanding of what the tech is. Otherwise, I don't know how you effectively sell or market it.
Of course. I mean, like there's this saying, the one company that wins is the one that understands the customer or the user the best, right?
Totally. And it needs to go both ways, right? Like you want your product people also understanding the community and the users, right? They can't just be building in silos either. And so I think the most powerful teams are the ones that have kind of a blurred border there and have a lot of cross-team communication between product and between marketing, where product is expected to understand the end user and build with them in mind. And marketing is expected to understand the product and the benefits of it to those that they're marketing to.
100%. You talked about a couple of times about funnels now, right? And we know we have a kind of specialized target group as well. Um, could you put us through a little bit of the user journey? Like, because I have no idea like how professionalized you have your funnels, right? Like top of funnel, middle, and bottom of funnel. But if you don't mind sharing a few of your nuggets here, that would be awesome.
Sure. I think one thing that you can really do to optimize this process is optimize for product-led growth, right? So the ability for a user to come into your product, whatever it is, whether it's a consumer-facing app or something more infrastructure focused, and sign themselves up and get started with very little friction and very little manpower required from your team, because that's the number one thing that is going to allow you to scale. And so for Space and Time, something we did really early on was deliver, even though we're a ZK proven database, blockchain for ZK proven data, which, goes over a lot of people's heads and is not meant for everyone, right? It's meant for developers building very specific things within DeFi and financial services, et cetera. But what we did from the very beginning was create this really sexy AI-powered front-end studio for you to interact with this data. And it's not something that everyone uses, right? A lot of developers prefer to use APIs or SDKs or just, interact directly from. Hey everyone, I'm Catherine Daly. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Space and Time. Space and Time is the blockchain for ZK proven data, essentially the very first trustless database for crypto developers. And our goal is just to enable devs to create more sophisticated apps on chain with ZK proven data, making it easier and faster for users to onboard to crypto. Their smart contract, a lot of enterprises prefer to use, things that plug into their existing databases, but it has given us kind of this new opening to reach another level of users, which are consumers who just want to know about on-chain data, right? Like people who would maybe use Dune dashboards or other analytics tools just to see what's going on with their favorite protocol or their favorite game or their favorite NFT collection or their wallet or their friends' wallets. I don't know if anyone's creating dashboards about their friends' wallets. That would be weird, but you never know.
I'm pretty sure they are. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a little creepy. But and so we delivered this product kind of on top of Space and Time as just this really cool interface where anybody can go sign up at their wallet in one click and start building these dashboards using natural language converted from AI. And so it removes the barrier to entry, I guess, and removes a lot of the friction. And so automating that really helps you scale that funnel, right? Like you have hopefully awesome marketing efforts that are reaching a bunch of new users and potential users. And then, I'm sure you have a very efficient BD and sales team for onboarding, hopefully people helping out on the other side as well, DevRel, et cetera. But the easier it is for people to onboard by themselves, the more that scales.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, absolutely makes sense. Don't make me think, as the old saying goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
As easy as possible.
Love it. Love it. I mean, you said product-led growth, right? Which is a term that most startups that are product-focused throw around. Like, how does that actually fit into your strategy? If you allow me to dig a little bit deeper here.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's just been a lot of like really tedious but important UX testing, right? Like me sending off the Space and Time Studio to one of my friends who doesn't know anything about databases and saying, like, go build a dashboard around your wallet and in your activity, and having them give feedback on what their pain points were. That's been a lot of it, right? Just like user testing, and then a lot of like putting the magnifying glass on certain workflows, right? Like what does our workflow look like to even sign up with your wallet? Is this button loading too slowly? Is this screen confusing? Is the user unsure where to go after this? And so it's just a lot of trial and error on that part, gathering feedback from your community. We have like a handful of really awesome rock stars in our community that are focused specifically around building dashboards and kind of interacting with this data studio. And they've been phenomenal in providing feedback on how we can improve it. So yeah, it's really just figuring out pain points and eliminating them.
Cool. I mean, Let's talk a little bit about channels, right?
Mhm.
You have talked about it before, like Web3 has different channels that work here that most likely wouldn't work as well in Web2 and the other way around. Like what are some, like of course social media, X, fairly standard, but what are some lesser known but that you figured kind of effective marketing channels for Web3?
That's a great question. I think websites that scan either tokens or apps like, DeFi Llama, CoinMarketCap, places like that are underrated channels. It draws a lot of attention from users and gets a lot of visibility. And then of course there are emerging channels like Farcaster and other Web3 social specific platforms as well that Web2 people know nothing about. But I mean, X is still king in my opinion. I don't think crypto is moving off of X as its primary communication channel anytime soon. And it is funny when we work with a lot of our more traditional Web2 partners like Microsoft, for example, we just have very different priorities in the campaigns we create together. Of course, they're much more focused on traditional media. And when it comes to social, LinkedIn is a huge priority, whereas we're principally focused on X, right? Like the more successful your campaign is on X, the more successful it is in general, and it kind of matriculates throughout. Like I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, or Tuesday, we announced this new integration with Microsoft, where space and time data is going to be integrated directly in Microsoft Fabric, and we got some good media traction from the get-go. But really, what started to get the ball rolling in terms of traction and visibility was the reaction that we got on X. And once people started getting really plugged in on X, then new publications started picking up the news, new influencers started talking about it organically, and it kind of just, the snowball grew from there. So it's very different because X, I think, is just one of like 100 channels that you use in Web2 marketing, but it really is, at least right now, still the principal one in Web3.
All right. I mean, talking about influencers, how do you vet them? Like, how do you make sure they fit your goals? Because of course there are lots of them, there are lots of KOLs, but how do you determine, okay, those are good ones, those are the ones I want to work with?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the spray and pray method that people have done historically really doesn't work and is kind of a waste of money. And so you just have to work backwards, right? You have to think about what is the message you want to convey. And it's the thing we've been talking about the whole time. What's the narrative you want to convey? Who is the user base you're trying to reach? What is the action that you want them to take? Is it to sign up with your product? Is it to evangelize your community? Is it to hold your token? Whatever it may be. Who are the KOLs that those people listen to? And again, the best thing that you can do for yourself to understand this is to be boots on the ground in the community yourself, to be incessantly on crypto Twitter, to be in your own Discord, to hear what people are saying, to keep a finger on the pulse of where the community is leaning on any given day. So who are the people that those users or audience members are going to listen to? What kind of content do they create? Is it aligned with the narrative that you're wanting to push? And then how can you create long-term partnership with them and ensure that, they're helping you meet your goals rather than, again, just throwing money at the problem and expecting it to be solved.
One thing I oftentimes wonder, right? Because we have strong and weak network effects, right?
Mm,
Which is to be honest, a thing I just learned this week. Wasn't aware of
mm.
that, right? But you like for everyone listening that doesn't know, weak networks effects are basically, let's say, solutions platforms where it's easy for users, regardless, to switch and still see some value, right? Infrastructure as a blockchain infra is a great example. That being said, um, I think a lot about marketing, especially in the infrastructure space, is about authority, conveying value, like why people should be here. Of course, this can be tech, the product, the UX, all these things. But are there some targeted things? Because I'm just thinking from a user or developer perspective, you get bombarded with solutions and tools, and like how to try to push through the noise to say, hey, like we are actually helpful. We are actually are useful for you.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is really just building a product that is actually useful for them, right? And finding product market fit that way. Like, honestly, if you don't have that proper product market fit, no amount of amazing marketing in the world is going to save you, especially as, cycles go up and down. So in the case of space and time, we have very strong network effects because data is something that's difficult for people to migrate and difficult for people to connect through a bunch of external systems. So without space and time, developers are having to spin up like a database, which is maybe centralized and tamperable, which nobody likes, and also an indexing product, which a lot of them on the market are notoriously unreliable and people are not happy with them. And also an Oracle network to get that data to their smart contract. And also ETL tools to transform data between all different sources, and also maybe a separate database for analytics. And it's just really requires like a full-time person at least on the team to spin up and maintain a lot of points of failure, and in many cases, a lot of points of centralization. And so space and time has entered the space to kind of solve that like on a complete level, right? And eliminate all of these different point solutions that you have to spin up just for the purpose of getting data to your smart contract. And even when you do, in cases of those point solutions, it's not data your smart contract can trust. It's data that can be tampered and manipulated, and therefore shouldn't be being used by a smart contract to do something like secure value on chain. And so that is a very clear problem for developers, and one we've come in to fix. And so it is a much easier solution just by nature. And once you migrate all of your data into space and time and start to use these things, like why would you ever migrate back out to 5 other solutions that, again, are going to be very difficult to get into and spin up, very difficult to maintain, and introduce new points of failure into your stack. So from a product perspective, that problem kind of solves itself just in what we've built and in the experience we've created for our devs. But from a marketing perspective as well, like it just comes down to telling this narrative correctly and understanding what these pain points are in your users and effectively communicating how you solve it, right? And from a sales perspective, it gets even more specific, right? You have a customer call or a prospect call. You have to understand what specifically their pain points are and how specifically your product solves it. Same thing with the KOLs or the marketing. You can't just spray and pray and like, oh, here's all the benefits of space and time. You have to say, oh, I know you are having trouble with your indexing solution right now, and you need better data for Avalanche. Well, guess what? We have it. And that's the stickiness that you find. And same thing goes for marketing, right? Like with marketing, it becomes a bit more general because you're trying to reach a bunch of different audiences at once. But the better you segment them, the better you understand their individual pain points, and the better you tailor the narrative to meet them where they are and address those pain points, the more successful you'll be.
Another saying, if you target everyone, you appeal to no one, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Gotta get specific. Yeah.
we have talked a lot about data marketing, and you do have a CK infra, so I guess you expect that question. Like, I know it's kind of a little bit visionary and far-fetched, but do you see a future in a distinct universe or whatever where marketing could actually be protected, gated, whatever, by zero knowledge proofs?
Yeah, I actually don't think that's far-fetched at all. I think there's one very tangible way that can be and is being implemented today, which is with reward systems, right? Like when you reward your community via an airdrop or any other mechanism, you're essentially aggregating a bunch of data, both from on-chain and probably off-chain sources as well, calculating and figuring out some algorithm over that data to determine the rewards, and then sending that data to a smart contract to actually distribute them or allow people to claim them. And that's kind of the quintessential use case for space and time. Most of our customers today are using that for things like DeFi, but it's perfectly positioned for marketers as well, or for community builders designing these rewards. I think ZK comes into play in when you want to prove that back to the community, right? Like when you want to publish proof that this was all done in a verifiable and tamper-proof way. And any on-chain reward system, like for games, for example, it can use this as well. Now, in terms of like marketing analytics, ZK proving those, I think that's maybe a little bit more nascent, but I think could find a lot of product market fit in the crypto community, especially as your community begins to decentralize. For an entity to be able to publish to the broader community that these analytics are verifiable, community who has a vested interest in seeing how user data has grown, for example, or how Twitter analytics have grown, could be really valuable as well. But I think the cool thing about a ZK proven database is that the use cases are unlimited, right? Like every app, every protocol, every business in the world needs a database, including marketing. Your CRM is a database. Your, HubSpot or whatever tools you're using are essentially just like a wrapper on top of a database. And so the idea of doing these analytics or doing these data-driven actions in a verifiable way is valuable, especially in a community like crypto where verifiability is paramount. So I think there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon that people could use it for.
Lovely. Cool stuff. I mean, I would say that's a great time to ask you for your 3 biggest key takeaways or key learnings that you would share with young marketers out there.
Great question. I think number one is what I said at the very beginning, which is like, don't discount traditional marketing vehicles. I think there's a lot crypto marketing still has to learn from traditional marketing. But that said, I also think the biggest difference in Web3 marketing is that everything is changing all the time. So you also can't ignore community sentiment. And like I said, being boots on the ground, being incessantly on crypto Twitter is paramount to your success as a Web3 marketer. Like everything's changing fast. Something that worked 4 months ago doesn't necessarily work today. And then the third would be, again, just understand your user base, understand the different segments of your target audience, understand what their pain points are, and start there. Like always work backwards from who it is, right? Like the person or the profile of the person and what their problem is, and then work backwards on how your product solves it or how your solution solves it, and then that's how you create your narrative.
Love it. I mean, that's a great ending, I would say. That being said, thanks Catherine for your time. It was really a pleasure talking with you. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
WaveAct, the Web3 software company that understands what you want.